gosh. Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. That is correct. We are celebrating Thor, Love and Thunder. Did I get that right, Evan Bevins?
That is the name of the new movie coming up.
I really, really enjoyed Thor Ragnarok. This will be the fourth Thor film, correct?
Yes, indeed.
I assume you've watched the other three leading up to this, right?
Yes, yes, I have.
If I put you on the spot and ask you to rank them, how would you rank the previous three Thor movies?
Oh, I mean, Ragnarok's number one for me. I know that's not everybody's favorite, but I can't take a straight Thor movie. I mean, I just can't take a serious Thor movie. I know everybody considers Dark World the bottom of the MCU barrel. I enjoyed it. I would probably give the slight edge to the first Thor movie just because the story is a little stronger. There's an actual villain you can remember. But I still think Dark World. I mean, it's a movie I'll put on and watch and enjoy. It's not top tier, but if Dark World's the worst you have to offer, then that's still a heck of a series of pushing 30 movies.
Right. It's not horrible by any stretch of the means. I liked it when I watched it. So I'm right there with you. The same ranking, 3, 1, and 2. I probably watched Ragnarok, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 times. And that's saying a lot for me because I usually don't go back and revisit movies a whole lot unless I really like them. I've enjoyed Ragnarok. I like watching the stylistic choices that are made in that movie are right up my alley. I really enjoy it. So
and Korg is my favorite character in the MCU. So.
He was great. What a great addition to that franchise, man. So we're getting ready to the Thor: Love and Thunder. If you've seen the trailers, you may know what's coming. And what we're going to be doing tonight is covering a book that featured this this lady who could pick up the hammer. She was worthy. Who is she? I wonder. I don't know. A lot of people out there are probably already understand who this person is. I will say, as we get into this 2014 series, Thor, Goddess of Thunder. So we're getting into the first volume, which is the first 5 issues. And this is an 8-issue series with an annual in there. Is that right?
I can't remember if there was an annual. I didn't get it. It was 8 issues because issue 8 was when Secret Wars hit.
Okay. Yes.
So we actually, if I'm not mistaken, issue 8 revealed who Thor was, and remarkably, at least for me, it hadn't been spoiled at that point. Usually, when there's something big that might make people outside the comics notice, a press release gets issued slightly before or right as the issue comes out. Issue 8 was the end, then the whole Marvel Universe ended, and she actually played a decent role. She was one of the survivors of the 616 in Secret Wars.
Okay.
So,
okay.
She actually played a not super prominent role, but she was one of the folks who remembered the world before Battle World and stuff like that.
Nice. Very nice.
And then they followed her for I forget how long when they came back from Secret War and then into Marvel Legacy. I mean, this was Thor for 3 or 4 years, I'd say.
Well, I did find out they did write an annual. Looks like 3 stories, one called King Thor, the other one called Thor, and then Young Thor. And Young Thor was written by at the time, so this is 2015. I don't think he's wrestling at this time. CM Punk.
Okay, yeah, he did a Drax the Destroyer series for Marvel too.
Right.
That was more on traditional Thor, who just doesn't move the meter for me as much. I know Jason Aaron, who is a writer I like, he did a lot of stuff before and after this, like focusing on Thor back in Viking times and stuff, and it wasn't bad. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
I've talked about Thor on here before. As a matter of fact, I think I shared with you a while back that big comic score that I had a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what were in those issues were like, Bronze Age Thor issues. Not my thing. I'm not reading any of that. I'm not reading Thor. I didn't, as a character, it's not like I didn't like him. I just, street level Starch over here is not going to be hopping into Asgard anytime soon.
Not enough Punisher crossovers for your liking.
That's correct, sir. So at some point, I don't know how I hear it. Most likely it's because of a comic book podcast that I listen to or something. But I start hearing the murmur about Gore the God Butcher.
Uh-huh.
And I start hearing about what I think it was called God Bomb, I think was the name of the
Yeah, that was when Aaron took over. I think Gore the God Butcher was his first story arc, and God Bomb was somewhere in there.
Okay. I'm absolutely reading those issues, and I will say that it was easily one of my favorite Thor stories that one of the few that I've read and actually remembered and really liked. That's the story that put Jason Aaron on the map for me. I didn't know anything about him prior to that, but when he could make me enjoy a Thor comic, that says a lot. So I was like, I'm not going to forget this guy. And we've covered, actually, because of that, I've covered other things that Jason Aaron has done on this podcast. And there's a couple other things I want to do as well that Jason Aaron's done. But that was, I wish I could remember when God Bomb happened. Because it was
a couple years before this, because even though this is, a very, memorable, unique era of Thor, it's all part of that. I mean, it was bookended by his original Thor stories, especially in the first issue. I mean, it's very clear, even though this starts off at number one, that it's part of an ongoing story he's telling.
Well, okay, so Jason Aaron obviously still writing this Thor story that we're about to get into with 2014's Goddess of Thunder. The creative team on the book, Jason Aaron writing things, Russell Dodderman is the artist, colored by Matthew Wilson, and lettered by VC's Joe Sabino.
Well, I know you said Thor was what introduced Jason Aaron to you. I got acquainted with Jason Aaron when he was writing Wolverine and the X-Men.
Okay.
Which was the idea that Cyclops had gone a bit too over the edge, and Wolverine, of all people, decided to restart the X-Men school, although he named it after Jean Grey instead of Charles Xavier. So it was the idea of Wolverine being the voice of reason and the headmaster for the X-Kids, and that series was a lot of fun. That brought me back to the X-Men for the first time since Joss Whedon's run.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah. I was just looking that up. That was 2000. First volume dropped in 2011. I've heard of this series, but I've never read anything of it. I've never read any Wolverine and the X-Men.
It's a lot of fun. What sold me on it was, I think it was Bocello's cover for issue 3, which was Quentin Quire, who was, like one of the main holdovers from Grant Morrison's run, in a restroom at the school where he had spray painted on the wall, "Remember when Wolverine was cool? Me neither."
Ooh. Oh, that's harsh.
That got me to check it out, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. All right, then. Let's go ahead. We'll drop ourselves into the first 2 issues of this series. We're going to start out with these words from issue 1. So it says, "Change has come to Asgard. After a self-imposed exile, Odin the Allfather has returned to his former kingdom, now called Asgardia. But his wife, Freya, who had been ruling Asgardia in his stead as the All-Mother, has no intention of letting things go back to the way they were before Odin left. The biggest change, though, is that their son, Thor, the god of thunder, now finds himself no longer worthy of wielding Mjolnir, his enchanted hammer. In a recent battle on the moon, super spy Nick Fury, empowered with secrets he stole from the Watcher, whispered something that caused Thor to drop Mjolnir to the moon's surface, where it has remained ever since. No matter how hard he tries, Thor cannot lift it. The leadership of Asgardia is uncertain, and Thor now in a severely weakened state. It is only a matter of time before the enemies of Asgard strike, bringing doom to both the fabled realm and Earth itself." Now, I've got some more to go here. This is my words now. Speaking of Earth, frost giants have emerged, led by the evil dark elf magician king Malekith. I don't know how many more descriptor words. Evil dark elf magician king Malekith, wreaking havoc on an undersea Roxxon facility, searching for something that they have. Once Odin is given word that Midgard is getting attacked, Thor grabs his axe. Stormbreaker? Is that Stormbreaker?
I believe it's Yarnbjorn.
Yarnborn. Okay. What am I thinking? Stormbreaker is...
Stormbreaker's the axe from the movies.
Okay. All right. Thor grabs his axe, mounts his goat, one of his goats, by the way. He has 2, doesn't he?
Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, I believe.
That's right.
I said it fast enough that it sounds like I know what I'm talking about.
You are absolutely right. And heads to face the threat. However, in the battle with Malekith, Thor is soon outmatched, gets his left arm severed, and is defeated. And at the end of the first issue, we return to the moon to watch events unfold, leading to a mysterious blonde easily lifting Mjolnir above her head. Flying towards the now frozen Pacific Ocean, Lady Thor. That's how I'm going to refer to her. Do you have a preferred nomenclature for the female Thor we have here?
Well, I know they were very intentional that she just be Thor, that she was Thor. Years ago there was a character called Thor Girl.
Okay.
It was a female cosmic entity that idolized. But yeah, they just call her Thor. I have no problem with for clarity purposes referring to her as Lady Thor.
Okay.
Perhaps that's not quite as progressive as Marvel was hoping to be, but part of the story is whether she was worthy of the name.
Right, and the thing is that it's audio. I don't know.
Yeah, it's totally descriptive. We are not questioning the validity.
That is exactly right. Exactly right. So Lady Thor finds the frozen
that hammer.
Flying towards the now frozen Pacific Ocean, Lady Thor finds the frozen bodies of Asgardians and the Avengers who came to fight the Frost Giants. Running into two of the Frost Giants, Lady Thor gets to discover just how powerful she is, dispatching the giants and their dogs with ease. Meanwhile, the Roxxon headquarters and the floating island it calls home sits high upon a spire of ice in the middle of the ocean. Still being attacked by the Frost Giants, CEO Dario Agger believes they are after a large skull that they had found on the ocean floor. While Ulik the Troll keeps the giants busy, Dario heads to a safe room but is cornered by four giants. Luckily, Lady Thor appears and engages with the giants long enough for Dario to open the doors to an adamantium reinforced safe room and closes the doors behind it. But it just so happens those doors shut with Mjolnir inside trying to fly back to Lady Thor's hands outside of the chamber. Now, without her hammer, Lady Thor wonders what she will do without it as Malekith has arrived. That's our first two issues. There we go. Evan, I've got a few jumping on points here that we could talk about with these first two and see what you have to say about it. The relationship between Thor and Mjolnir. So let's just kind of examine this real quick, because we start this book and we find out that Thor has lost the ability to pick up his hammer. I mean, you have to be worthy in order to pick it up. Can you shed some light? All that Fury did was go over to Thor and whisper some stuff. And what did he say?
Well, if I can look it up, it's been a while. There was a limited series called The Unworthy Thor that finally revealed exactly what it was that Fury said to him. Gore was right.
Oh.
Gore was trying to destroy these gods because he thought gods were unworthy, were not worthy of worship. And Fury basically said, yeah, people don't need you. There's some other stuff going on with the hammer as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But right. There's part of me that found the whole God Butcher thing interesting, and then part of me that has a knee jerk like, oh, so you just don't like religion. And that's not a fair classification, because most of the Asgardian gods, Odin especially, they're jerks. Actual God, a lot better. I know I stumbled on that discussion when we were talking Fear itself. Most of the gods you see in the comics are basically they have the same attitudes and faults as the rest of us. They just live a lot longer.
And of course, that probably messed with his head as well. And
yeah,
right. I could imagine. I mean, well, to think that this one thing that kind of makes you who you are, all of a sudden you lose it. It makes for an interesting story, in my opinion. Like, oh my gosh, why isn't he able to do this? You can tell that he is consumed with that. Like, he has got to figure out, why isn't he? He's got to go out there and try. I think we open it at some point with Thor trying to lift the hammer, and he just can't. And
Odin can't either.
Right, which makes it, that's great that to watch Odin not be able to pick it up and like, what is going on here?
That there are other things going on with the hammer as well. As to why this new person is the one who can pick it up, and that's that gets into a lot of backstory with the hammer and the true nature of it and things like that. But yeah, the what caused Thor to drop it originally was Fury saying Gore was right.
Okay. What do you think of our villain here, Malekith, able to best Thor and cut his freaking arm off?
I don't know that I ever read anything with Malekith before this, and I'm trying to remember. We were talking about Dark World, and Malekith is pretty much accurately viewed as one of the worst villains in the MCU. I think what happened with that was that Loki wasn't supposed to be in the Dark World, and everybody liked Tom Hiddleston so much that they put him in, so it kind of squeezed Malekith out. I mean, he's pretty generic in the movie. I'd heard of him, but I don't remember reading much with him. I had in here reading this, he basically reminds me of Magic Joker.
Yeah, he's kind of like got this bit of, it's not really insanity, but he's very chaotic. Like, I mean, he just doesn't care.
Kind of a sadistic sense of humor.
Right. He kills one guy. Let me paint the picture for everybody out there that's listening. Malekith shows up and he's trying to find the skull. He's asking one of the workers there in the facility to, hey, where's it at? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And he just straight up kills him because he asked him that question. And he asked the other guy, he's like, where's it at? And he's like, I will find whatever you're looking for. And the guy's like, all right, now and Malekith's like, all right, now you're talking. And he lets that guy live for a little bit, not too long.
Yeah.
But
I guess Dark World came out a year before this. So, yeah, I don't know how much synergy there was. Dark World came out the year before this. So, of course, Malekith had been announced as the villain, probably a couple years before that. And I don't remember how much Malekith played a role in before this. I read those, but it's been a while. So he probably was showing up even before then. I mean, Dario Agger, however you say it, had definitely been in previous issues of Thor. So maybe it was to tie in with the Dark World is why they were, propping Malekith up. But I mean, he works well the way Jason Aaron uses him. This was just the first time I really remember reading about him.
Some of the other notes I have here, there's some slight allusions here that Freya might be involved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that happens in these issues, but I know that at some point we learned that it's not her.
Yeah, not in these first two, but yeah, that does get hinted at.
Okay, and then the other thing I had here was Lady Thor's inner monologue versus her speech.
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite things about this.
Right? Yes, anytime she spoke, it was in that. How would you describe that?
It's the Asgardian classical. Shakespearean almost.
Yeah, right. Right.
Dialect.
But in those thought bubbles, they're all like just regular person.
Oh yeah. It was a fantastic contrast, and that also gave you an idea of the hammer didn't just change her physically, because she was saying things that she was surprised to hear herself saying. One of my pet peeves with it, though, and this was when I first read it, and even rereading it. The first issue is good. It shows you you're in part of a larger story. It sets up the mystery and everything. But before that first issue came out, it had been announced for months. The new Thor is a woman. The cover of the first issue is the new female Thor. And the whole issue builds to a cliffhanger if someone picks up the hammer and it's a lady. Going back and reading it, it's a good issue. It tells a solid story. But I remember, I'd been looking forward to this. Let's see what this mystery is. And I'm like, I plunked down $4 or $5. And I'm supposed to be surprised that Thor's a lady. I didn't mind the mystery itself, but I'm like, okay, so I knew for months. I knew from the cover that Thor's a lady now. And the story you told me ends with, hey, Thor's a lady. I mean, that would have been like if the first episode of Lost had been, hey guys, the plane crashed. Like that's the whole point of the show. We knew that. Come on.
Right.
I'm not saying it doesn't tell a good story. The way they go through this with jumping back and forth and with some of the flashbacks and time shifts, I think they could have loaded maybe a little more of the stuff from issue 2 and flashed back a little more. Like I said, it's not a bad story in a vacuum, but when you buy that issue and, it's like, it's all building up to this, you got to see the new Thor. And the only real new thing you get is Thor's a lady. It felt like issue 2 was the first issue of this series, and this was just like a 0 issue.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. So the other note that I have here, I just want to learn while I'm with you right now about Dario Agger, because I didn't know what in the world we were getting with Dario here. This character is brand new to me, but that's probably because just looking at MarvelFandom.com, created in Thor God of Thunder number 19, February of 2014. So just a few months before this came out. Right. I mean,
I know he was I was thinking he was a creation of Jason Aaron's. That's certainly where I first saw him. He's a supervillain who's a CEO, and I think you get in issue 2 you've got him mixing corporate speak with brutal supervillainy. Like, okay, well, fire everybody on the 9th level, by which I mean release the napalm. It's not that there's anything revolutionary about portraying billionaire CEOs as villains, but he goes a little over the top with it,
Right.
a little beyond the cliches, and kind of mixes the jargon there.
As far as evil corporations go in Marvel, Roxxon's got to be top. I don't know. It might be the top one. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I mean,
they've been around for a long time. They had ties to Deathlock back in the 70s. Roxxon's always been kind of like a generic, massive corporate entity at Marvel. It seems like more recently they've just gone more toward the straight up evil corporation. But they've always been, kind of in the background for Marvel for years. I was just looking up Roxxon. I guess it first appeared in 1974 in an issue of Captain America. So Roxxon was one of the earliest funders of S.H.I.E.L.D. However, they also had ties to Hydra. Well, and some of that was later. They got into the whole complicated S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are two sides of the same coin. A lot of that stuff evolves over the years. But I mean, I remember reading about Roxxon in comics from slightly before I was born. But I think it really became the go-to evil corporation. I mean, it was always a plot device and a common thread in the backdrop of Marvel, but I think it really became, the symbolic evil corporation a little more recently.
And here's Dario Agger, now CEO, who's got Ulick the Troll working for him, which is pretty cool. All right, I'm stepping back, man. What are your notes here?
Let's see. Well, like I said, I thought it told a good story. Just maybe could have been, rearranged a little bit for issue 1. You talked about the dialogue. I love that. The new Thor has some great lines, like when she slugs that frost giant, says, "Tell me, how much did it hurt whenever Thor would punch you? More or less than this." I think the first time I really read about Thor was in, I don't know if you ever read a comic called The Marvel Saga that was kind of like came out in the early 80s and kind of put all the Marvel stuff in order.
It was like a chronology. I've read some of it, yes.
And I remember one of the earliest things I read about Thor was him fighting Loki and getting separated from the hammer. And back in the olden days, if he didn't have the hammer in his hand for a minute, he turned back into Dr. Don Blake. And
right.
Thor was one of the first superheroes that they were just like, forget the secret identity. It was cool to see them kind of go back to that. And then and we don't know, because we don't know who the new Thor is. We don't know how her powers work. So, we're kind of wondering along with her, hey, so if she doesn't have the hammer, what happens? Because that used to be a trope of Thor's, and then it was just like, nah, he's just Thor.
That's a good point.
If the hammer gave her powers, whereas it more augments Thor's abilities, I guess, these days. If the hammer gave her powers, then does she have the same old Achilles heel Thor did? Kind of disappointed with the first issue when I initially read it. Like I said, going back, the story's fine. The second issue, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like this. I'm gonna stick with this. This is very cool what they're doing.
All right. Well,
she had more going for her than just the mystery. They had good dialogue and lots of stuff going on there that made me want to come back for more.
Issues 3 and 4. In issue 3, we flash to days previous, where Malekith convinces the king of the Frost Giants, Skrymir, the skull of their greatest king, Laufey, has been found by Roxxon. Worried that invading Midgard would result in a losing war with Thor, Malekith assures him that Thor has lost control of Mjolnir, giving Skrymir the confidence they could retrieve the skull and survive any battle that will come their way. In the present, Malekith, now draped with the unattached arm of Thor, lets loose some frost giants to try to kill Lady Thor, who finds she is able to hold her own without Mjolnir, but realizes some of the magic that makes her powerful may be fading away. However, while Malekith and Dario Agger, CEO Dario Agger, fight inside the chamber, Lady Thor is able to pry the vault doors open and let loose Mjolnir. A nearby crate is smashed, and there lies the skull of Laufey. Thinking he is victorious, Malekith looks to take the skull back with him until Lady Thor promptly shatters it with her hammer. Malekith exclaims that a war is coming for sure now, but just then, male Thor appears with a new arm, ready to take back his hammer. It doesn't take long, and Lady Thor and male Thor are fighting. Finally, Thor Odinson realizes that the hammer chose this woman as a worthy wielder and confirms with her that she is not his mother, which, yeah, that's funny.
I certainly hope not.
Right. Now their attention turns to the remaining frost giants as the pair kill them quickly. Malekith teleports and escapes, burning Thor's severed arm right up in front of him. Rescuing the rest of the heroes, Thor Odinson finds his mother and explains to her and Lady Thor that he gladly gives up the name Thor to this new woman who now wields the hammer. In a small epilogue, we learn that the skull that was smashed on his island was not the real skull of Laufey, and Dario Agger is now bargaining with Malekith for control of other realms. So there we go. That is issues 3 and 4 of Thor, Goddess of Thunder.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed, not exactly a ticking clock, but the suspense with what's going to happen with Thor without the hammer. I thought that was really well done, really suspenseful. Part of my comic legalism was like, wait a minute, it's got to have been 60 seconds by now, but we don't really know if that's exactly how it works. I really liked the way they did that, and some of her dialogue where she's projecting confidence but saying, okay, well what would Thor actually do? And then she says Thor would bellow and bluster and rage until they cut off his arms, and then he would kick the heck out of him. A lot of that interior monologue lets you know for sure that she is someone that Thor knows. And I know in issue 5, not to get too far ahead, we get a list of suspects that Thor has, but I think my working theory at that point was that she was Roz Solomon, who's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that had been introduced in Aaron's previous run, that had been kind of set up as an ally and maybe even a love interest for Thor. I know Jane Foster was showing up too, but I don't know. I was leaning toward Roz Solomon. We do get that moment of suspense where her disguise is starting to fade, and we do almost see who she is. Drama there was done pretty well. I thought it was cool the way they showed Thor shows up. Obviously, he's angry, a bit of a Thor loser, if you will.
That's great.
But once he sees how the hammer acts for her and does things that he's never seen it do, that was pretty cool. Not only in story, but the way they did that with the art to show you, even for a casual Thor reader like me, okay, this is different.
When that whole fight starts, I mean, it's so great. Obviously, like you said, Odinson shows up and he's got an attitude already because somebody is running around with his hammer. But when he gets up in her face and she just so ever gently taps his chest with the hammer, and there's a look, all it is a panel of Odinson's eyes, and he is enraged. You dare. And then it is on from there. But yeah, I love how, just like you said, Thor Odinson gets respect for the new Thor just because he's starting to see how much, and he says that, I think, he can't believe that the way the hammer is working and is doing things that he never seen it do before for him. That solidifies her a little bit as Thor. So
honestly, her telling Thor to calm himself down in retrospect is a major clue to who she is, because there's not a lot of people who could do that and not actually be trying to provoke him or just pick a fight.
Good point.
Now granted, he took it that way, but if you look at that the way she's doing it, I mean, she knows Thor, she respects Thor, and there's very few characters who could thread that needle of putting Thor in his place and really having the authority and the familiarity to do it.
Are you upset that we didn't get to see like the Avengers, everybody get frozen and lose this battle against the Frost Giants?
Part of me wonders, especially with the way comics are today, why didn't we get a, Thor 1.5 Avengers versus Frost Giants? But I mean, it's not necessary. Not everything has to be a crossover. The point was to show that, hey, these guys are a threat, and new Thor took them out. I mean, I'm not overly familiar with the Frost Giants, so I was like, it's a big deal. It's some ice giants. Whoop-de-doo. They took out the Avengers off panel. The only other character I know that I've seen defeat the Avengers off panel is Squirrel Girl. So,
so you're okay with that?
Yeah. We got to get volume 2 on the schedule. They served their purpose, and it's a Thor story. So we got a little bit of Spider-Man, a little bit of Captain America, but you know, the Avengers served their purpose in this story, which was to show you the frost giants were a threat, but we focused on the characters at hand. My favorite Thorism is "I say thee nay."
Right, dude.
My kids even know that one. Yeah, the fact that she says "I say thee nay," which again I think was more magic personality alteration rather than trying to irritate Thor. But yeah, I loved it when she dropped that line.
Oh yeah, yeah. All right. Issue 5, Behold a New Age of Thunder, written by Jason Aaron, guest artist Jorge Molina, and letters by VC's Joe Sabino. On Asgardia, Odin is having some issues with Mjolnir being controlled by a strange woman. He has employed the god of fear, Carl Borson, as the royal inquisitor and minister of justice in righting this wrong.
You remember old Cull from Fear itself?
I barely.
Yeah,
when I saw this...
He was the serpent. He was the big bad in Fear itself.
Okay, all right. Freya implores Thor Odinson to get word of warning to the new Thor, and he promptly heads to the bar and runs into Sif. So it's like, yeah, I'll go get, as soon as I get a drink. Runs into Sif. The conversation quickly leads to Odinson interrogating Sif if she is the one who now wields the hammer, to which she denies and throws her drink in his face. Odinson then proceeds to drown his troubles, bemoaning the events that led to his separating from Mjolnir. On Earth, the new Thor runs into the Absorbing Man and Titania and is surprised in the midst of battle that Titania turns on her husband out of respect for a lady now wielding the hammer. And also, she just wants she wants Absorbing Man back in jail because his eyes tend to wander a bit. When he's out for too long. So when she returns to the moon, Freya appears, giving her the warning of what is to come and telling her to remain worthy of the name of Thor. Deep in the bowels of Asgardia, Odin leads Carl Borson into a chamber to unveil the weapon they are going to unleash on this imposter Thor, the Destroyer. Woo, the Destroyer. I was waiting for the Destroyer to show up. That's always a big reveal.
Oh yeah.
So
never seems to work out well, but everybody's like, yeah, let's bring the Destroyer.
Let's bring on the Destroyer. That's kind of issue 5. We basically get Thor, who's kind of still upset over the fact that he lost his hammer. Thor Odinson is upset he still lost his hammer, and he's got a list of people he's trying to cross off. Obviously, it's not Sif. At least he doesn't think it is. He's pretty sure it's not his mom. So we're going to look at that list here in a second. And then, of course, we got Thor on Earth running into a couple baddies and having a real interesting exchange with Titania.
Absorbing Man kind of standing in for some of the fans. You know, we're saying, oh, you want to be a chick superhero? Fine. Who cares? But get your own identity. Thor's a dude. You know.
I thought, my opinion, and this was my note, is like Odin feels like a representation of the many who are decrying this female Thor. Like he is the guy that's like out to right this wrong. This cannot stand, and I will make sure that it doesn't.
And I mean, I didn't have a problem with it because I thought they executed it well. But right before this, I think, because we saw him in issue 4, Sam Wilson became Captain America. And I like that. That was a good story. And then and after Secret War, but still while we had the new Thor, the new Captain America, you had Ironheart, Riri Williams took over for Iron Man.
Right.
And I liked each of those characters and I liked each of those stories. But, you know, for people who are like, oh, well, they're just trying to shoehorn in diversity. Well, they're trying to tell a different story. Nothing wrong with that. But to stack all three of them on top of each other, I don't know that it was intentional, but I think it kind of took some of the impact away from it. Like, hey, we're just going to change everybody.
I've always been somebody who, if you can tell a decent story and you can tell this change, then I'm not going to have a problem with it.
Especially with this Thor and then Sam Wilson as Captain America. I mean, those two characters made sense from a story standpoint. You know, okay, with Iron Man, okay, we had Jim Rhodes step in, you know, so why not do something totally different? Somebody with a totally different background and life experience than Tony Stark. Like I said, I liked all of those approaches. I just thought they kind of undercut each other by doing them one right after the other. It felt like change for change's sake from the outside looking in, when in the stories, they were actually good stories, I thought. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, different people like different stuff, but I remember reading an interview with a guy who had this massive comic collection. They asked him what he thought about some of these complaints, and he's like, man, I can go out in my long boxes and get hundreds of stories about Tony Stark as Iron Man. Let me read something different. I don't think certainly for a second that was the only reason they did these stories, but I understand that argument, and it just kind of, it was like in the 90s when you had Superman died, Batman broke his back. It was just, it was like, okay, well, on the one hand, it's a cool story, but on the other hand, are you just doing, okay, well, we did this for Superman, let's do the same thing for Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and that wasn't at least the whole motivation, but that's kind of how that's kind of how it felt at times. It's like, hey, let's just do this. Let's just do this thing because we did this for somebody else and it worked. I enjoyed this. I liked Thor's scroll of suspects.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
I'm looking at it. If you want me to start reading them.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Hildegard.
So Hildegard was an Asgardian Valkyrie gifted with extraordinary strength and great skills with the sword.
Brunhilde is Valkyrie of Defenders fame. Different from the movie Valkyrie. I always enjoyed the original Defenders, so I had a fondness for her. And then Idun, the youthful maiden, Idun the ever young, the goddess of immortality and keeper of the golden apples.
How do you spell Idun?
Idunn.
First appeared in Journey into Mystery number 100, November of 1963. She was mentioned there. And it says Journey into Mystery 114, January 65. Must have been her first full appearance. And you know what? I'm starting to notice a trend here, at least in the last two that I looked at. I didn't look at Brunhilde, just to clarify. But
Brunhilde, I know her. So.
Both blonde so far. Is Brunhilde blonde?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes, she is.
All right. Okay, well, let's take a look. What's the next person?
Tareen, who is remember I mentioned Thor girl earlier?
Right.
Yeah, she is she's a cosmic entity, and she kind of modeled herself after Thor for a while. So she went by Thor girl.
Do you recall? Was she blonde?
Yes. Well, in some incarnations, the one I'm looking at now, it's kind of energy.
That's what I'm seeing too.
But yeah, most of the stuff I read with her was when she was part of the Initiative post-Civil War. And I mean, yeah, she was just a teenage girl Thor.
Okay. All right. I finally found the list. Jane Foster.
Not blonde.
Take a look. Not blonde. She's on the list, though. She's definitely, brunette, she's definitely a brunette.
Neither is Roz Solomon, who she was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I want to say Aaron introduced her, or at least she played a part in his run before this, and she was set up as kind of an ally and maybe even a love interest for Thor. Yeah, that's who my money was on.
All right.
And then Lorelei is she's some kind of Asgardian magic user. I think she's been more of a enemy to Thor.
First appeared August of 1983, Thor number 337. I just noticed that he is writing Sif ? After this. Isn't that after she throws her drink in his face? Okay.
She said, the only thing I could possibly have less interest in holding than you, Odinson, is that ridiculous hammer. Does that answer your question? And he says, not truly, no.
Well, I'm bringing up Amora here just to take a look.
Yeah, the Enchantress from the Masters of Evil, usually paired up with the Executioner.
Right.
Really surprised she hasn't made it into a movie yet. If you had told me years ago there would be 4 Thor movies and we wouldn't have seen the Enchantress yet,
that's insane.
And especially the movie's called Love and Thunder, and they went with Gore the God Butcher over the Enchantress.
Unbelievable. Fits so well.
Yeah. Oh, and for my money, when they first announced Christian Bale was going to be the villain, I thought he was going to be Dario Agger.
Well, he would have worked. I mean, it would have worked perfect. So Carnilla is what we're moving on to here next. I think that says Carnilla, right?
Yeah, Carnilla. I always remember her being referred to as the Norn Queen or the Queen of the Norns.
Yep. She's
an Asgardian sorceress type.
Yep. First appeared June of 1964. Boy, a lot of these appearing like right around that 100 issue of Journey. Was Journey into Mystery always the Thor book when it first started, or was it something different?
No, it was something else, because Thor's first appearance, I want to say, was Journey into Mystery number 83.
Okay. All right.
So it was an anthology thing.
Kelda? Kelda.
Yeah, okay. I didn't remember her name, but yeah, I remember her. She was in Straczynski's run. She was like this gorgeous goddess who fell in love with this kind of average dude in Broxton, Oklahoma, when Asgard was floating over top of Broxton, Oklahoma.
And then we have, help me out here, is that
Tana Nile?
Tana Nile.
The only thing that I know her from, even though she first appeared in Thor number 129, I'm looking it up online. I'm not that good. But the only thing that I know her from was actually Generation X. She's an alien. She's a Rigelian. It says here, I just remember in Generation X, she crash landed at the Massachusetts Academy, and Artie and Leech, the little mutant kids, they kind of hit her out in their treehouse, and they spun off into this weird series that I can't believe I haven't snatched up out of a dollar bin somewhere called Daydreamers. It was Artie, Leech, Franklin, Tana Nile, Man-Thing, and Howard the Duck.
Oh my gosh.
On like some kind of weird adventure. And I, every now and then that'll occur to me and I'm like, why have I not gotten this?
That screams Evan Bevins.
It's got to be floating around out there somewhere. So I think I'm going to put that on my next bargain bin hunt.
Tana Nile's first appearance, Thor 129 from April of 1966. Now we're going to get into a couple of very interesting ones here. The second from the bottom being Angela.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Angela, not me and you. I think it was me and Chris Armstrong, where we discussed the first appearance of Angela in Spawn number 9, I think it was, number 8
she's
or
the
number
only
9.
X-Image character that went to Marvel instead of DC.
Right. I love it. I don't think that was the plan initially. No. It's pretty much.
Wait. Oh, okay. That Angela. I thought you were talking about the mean blonde lady from The Office.
No. Afraid not. Although, you never know. Thor probably could have been like, that's a blonde. Like he has a whole list. Like that scroll is not continued to be unrolled. We don't know what's above Freya there. Angela is the angel that, if you go back into Spawn comics, was trying to hunt Spawn. She was a Spawn hunter at that point. What's interesting, and I don't know if it's known at this point, I assume it is, but Angela is supposedly Thor's sister. Is that right?
Right. That was spun out of Original Sin, which is the same event where Nick Fury gets Thor to drop the hammer. So yeah, at that point, it was known that she was Thor's sister or half sister or something.
Okay. All right. And then Loki. I mean, I don't think we have to really dive deep into who Loki is, but I love how he's at the bottom of the list.
It wouldn't be the first time Loki switched genders.
That's right. Thor Odinson knows that, by golly, there is some trickery about, and Loki may be involved in some way. Learned a lot there. I did. Again, the fact that we got a Lady Thor, a female version of Thor, a new Thor, what have you. I thought the story, these 5 issues are told well. If I was reading it at the time, I don't know when it got spoiled for me. So, folks, we're just going to spoil it here. If you want to stop it here, you're more than welcome to, because probably shortly after this, we're going to get into plugs anyway. But 3, 2, 1. I don't recall I don't recall how it got spoiled that Jane Foster was Thor, but I knew about it probably right after it happened somehow.
They kept the secret up until the reveal in issue 8, but after that it was all bets were off.
Right. Somebody was going to tell somebody, you were going to see it online. Now, I don't know if it gets explored. Does the cancer angle get explored in this story?
Oh, very, very much so, because it's revealed that every time she transforms into Thor, it expels toxins from her body. That includes chemotherapy, but It doesn't heal the cancer.
Okay.
So becoming Thor is literally killing her.
Wow. Well, we don't get any of that in this first 5. That's for sure.
No, there's one thing. I forget where she says something about, and who knows what it'll do to my, and then it cuts off, and I automatically filled in, cancer, because I knew the rest of the story. But yeah, that becomes a part of it, is that, she's doing this, and, there's certain things only Thor can do. And so she's got to decide, is she going to keep being a hero, or is she going to, try to save her life? I did think there was some good dialogue there when Odin brings in Kull as his minister of justice, and Thor says he's a butcher and a madman, and Odin said he is that as well, but that does not change his blood. Yeah, I thought the art was kind of neat. Russell Dodderman's great, but Malekith, he drew especially with kind of the smirk you get from Thor. That she's taking this seriously, but she's also enjoying it.
Oh yeah. Is that?
So yeah, I thought it was a nice change of pace issue, and kind of set up the second half of this short run to start off with.
It's almost like an animated look. Like when you look at Cole Borson, he looks like he is off of a cartoon almost.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Yeah, I didn't have any complaints about the art. All right, man. Well, we did it. We talked Thor, Goddess of Thunder, issues 1 through 5 of the 2014 series. Do you get out and go watch movies as often as I do, which is just about basically not? going out and watching movies.
Pretty much the only things I've seen since the pandemic, which not only speaks to pandemic caution, but my own hermit-like tendencies, have been the Marvel movies, because I know that I'm going to have them spoiled for me if I don't see them. So I will probably be trying to get to see Love and Thunder sooner rather than later.
I don't know if I'll be hitting the theaters as much as I would like to. It looks like it's a good movie. Is it Taika Waititi doing the directing again? Okay.
Yes.
If he's going to have that style like he did with Ragnarok, it's going to be an enjoyable movie, I'm sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. Oh, yeah, we got the Guardians of the Galaxy going to be in it, too. I forgot all about that. We got the Guardians in there, which that'll be fun. And a nice spacefaring adventure.
It'll be neat to see what Waititi does with them.
Right. I'm all about that. That's good stuff. Well, man, let's go ahead. We'll get into plugs here, buddy. Thank you for joining me tonight. You took, an hour and a half, 2 hours out of your day, sit down and talk some Thor with me.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I enjoyed this initial story. I didn't stick with it post Secret Wars. I think just because there were some other things that grabbed my interest, but I followed along through the library, and I mean I mostly liked the story of this Thor.
Well, so. What do you got going on nowadays, man? You doing some writing, doing some podcast shows? What's the plan?
*51.blogspot.com. You can see where I've written about Thor a little bit more often with regard to the Eternals, actually. Leading up to the Eternals movie, I was kind of reading up on them and found there's a very lengthy Thor storyline called the Eternals Saga. I wrote about a couple different issues of, particularly the one where he found an Eternal who was a luchador named El Vampiro.
Oh, yeah. You've mentioned him quite a few times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta. I like the fact that El Vampiro's out there fighting the good fight. Written a little about that, and then I think it was Thor 301 that has a very loose connection to the Shang-Chi movie, but that I think might actually have some influence on Love and Thunder, because it involves Thor visiting a bunch of other pantheons. So probably try to reshare that on Twitter. Right now I'm working my way through Secret Defenders, if you know anybody who likes 90s comics.
I do, turns out.
So, and I just finished up going through the X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine, which is Gonzo time travel story. You need to read it just for that, whether you do a show on it or not, just for the time travel insanity.
I love it. I'd love to do that.
Got a bunch of oddball movies from Dollar Tree that I need to write about. The Sneak Over, I did that a while back.
All right, yeah, the Sneak Over, the Stranger Things.
A blatant attempt to use the Stranger Things font. That's literally the only thing they have in common. Look for a few things. I need to get back into Ravage 2099.
Oh yeah,
give it the attention you and Chris Armstrong refused to.
All right. Yeah, I do know that you and I have another. Well, right now, actually, as we're recording, Evan and Chris and myself sat down and talked Color Blindness, which was a 4-issue Sleepwalker story.
A very special Sleepwalker story.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Early 90s. This is your brain on drugs.
And then you and me and Chris are going to complete the Darkhawk Sleepwalker trilogy with the Darkhawk Sleepwalker crossover.
Yeah, that is absolutely going to be happening. That is on the agenda. We also are, I don't think we've scheduled it yet, but I know you and I are going to be, and possibly even Chris Armstrong, going to be talking the new Fantastic Four. That and we said that was a 3-issue series, which, by the way, I read last night the first issue and part of the second. Interesting so far. It's interesting to see this new team kind of get together of some of the hottest Marvel characters at that point in time: Spider-Man, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and Grey Hulk.
Peter David just a couple weeks ago, they just released the first issue of a limited series that kind of picks up where the original story left off.
Oh, great!
And, first issue is great.
Well, that's going to be on the agenda as well sometime. There's a couple things I did with Kapow, the Pop Culture Podcast. I'll plug this time travel countdown for a while now, because it was such a good time. We did our top 20 combined top 20 countdown. We had 4 people on that podcast. You could veto other people's picks, and it got interesting. So if you want to check out me and a few others talking about time travel movies and trying to rank the top 20, go search out Kapow, the Pop Culture Podcast. And I'm also doing something with them called Kids on Bikes right now, which is a role-playing game We're going to be recording our next episode tomorrow. We're already, I think that'll be our third episode. Second episode aired yesterday, and we rolled our characters on our first episode, and then our second episode started our journey in the 80s. And it turns out
Nice.
I don't want to give anything away. Well, let's just put it this way: I was involved in a bike race.
Okay.
Okay, BMX bike race on my Huffy with my banana seat down at the fairgrounds here in Marietta, Ohio. And on the line was because apparently we were betting things, and one of those things that were in the betting was the first 20 sequential, sir. The first 20 cards of the ALF set. The ALF card set.
Oh, wow.
And apparently some Booyah baseball cards.
Oh,
One
wow.
of which was Melmac's own Gordon Shumway. Did I win? Did I lose? You'll have to tune in and listen to that first episode.
Now that's a tease.
Of grave decisions. Okay, last plug. I know that tomorrow I'm going to be recording with Dean Compton and Derry Waits coming back. So he was on a tiny bit of a hiatus. He's coming back. He's going to be discussing the 64-page one-shot of Soviet super soldiers.
Oh, okay.
Man, you talk about getting into some characters that
Ursa Major, Dark Star, Gremlin,
right?
Crimson Dynamo, Titanium Man.
You are right on point there. I think one of the most
I've seen the cover.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, if you've seen the cover, one of the most frightening things that happens in that whole comic is the appearance of the unicorn. Evan, you know I do notes. The Soviet super soldiers notes on Google Docs are 8 pages long.
Oh, wow.
So I learned a lot. I've said it before. I learned a lot doing that episode, researching for that episode, and I'm glad we get to record it tomorrow. But anyway, so that is on the agenda. As always, shout out to the W2M Network and, of course, the Radulich and Broadcasting Network as well. I go over there, hang out with Mark Radulich, talk some metal every once in a while. On Wednesdays, we're usually doing the Metal Hammer of Doom and some other shows. We got a TV party tonight. I've already recorded. I've just got to get it out there in podcast land, and that is me and Alexis Hana talking. I've recorded Hell of a Boss with her, and then right after that, it was me, her, and Benjamin J. Cologne, who jumped into The Last Ronin, TMNT The Last Ronin.
Okay.
So, yeah, keep an eye out.
So I got to finish that one.
All right, that's it. For Evan Bevins, I'm Jesse Starcher. We'll be talking to you soon. Although Evan may say the nay, I say the yay.
Have at thee.
There we go. That's Evan Bevins. I'm Jesse. We're out of here. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to give that Radulich in Broadcasting Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts we have to offer. We are at home on Spreaker, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and recently we have hit the air on Spotify. Find your favorite podcast platform and type in RADULICH to subscribe for some great content. If you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word, and as always, we appreciate any feedback and look forward to entertaining you again soon.